Finally, I decided to make a vocabulary video about the Italian words I use in my videos. Hello HEMA friends and welcome to this new video. So today I am going to deliver you the various translations and also description of the meaning of the various Italic words which I use to describe longsword fencing, generally speaking, which are based on the manual of Fiore dei Liberi. I never felt the need before of making this kind of video simply because the majority of people which were following me were into the study of the sources, and most of them were into Fiore mainly, which is the source I study the most and which I'm going to talk about in this video. But since the crowd of people which is following me is increasing and most of them are not too much into the sources or are approaching them from the beginning, I decided to make this video to make your life easier. So probably you are being redirected to this video, if you are watching it after it has been made, from another video in search of, let's say, the meaning of some kind of word. You will probably find it here. Difendente is a cut which comes from above and goes downwards. It's a vertical cut, a mostly vertical cut. There is not a specific path to follow. In Fiore there is a path described, an ideal path, but of course it's an ideal. Instead, you have to think about the fendente as a mostly vertical cut. So if it is more vertical than horizontal, it's a fendente. Instead, if it is more horizontal than vertical, now a mezzano is mostly a horizontal cut. Now it doesn't matter if it comes from above, below, or whatever, or if it is perfectly parallel to the ground. What it is important, it is mostly horizontal. When you are using the term mezzano, you are referring to a cut which is mostly horizontal. Now, while talking about a sottano instead, Fiore refers to a cut which is again mostly vertical, but that this time is going upward. So, in a sense, it is the opposite of the fendente. It goes more or less for the same path, but the direction is the opposite one. Now, the term punta instead refers to two different things. So it may be throwing a punta or landing a punta, which is like landing a thrust, throwing a thrust. So it is the action of thrusting, or it is the ending part of the sword. So this is the punta della spada, so it is the tip of the sword. So depending from the context in which the word punta is used, it either refers to landing a thrust, so scambiare di punta, for instance, is an action which means exchanging a thrust with another thrust, of course, or instead incrociare in punta refers to crossing at the tip of the blade, at the tip of the sword. Mezza spada instead can be translated directly into half sword, but the meaning of these words is used while crossing, generally speaking, to the middle of the blade, so the center part of the blade. So mezza spada in the context of crossing the sword with another sword is the middle of the blade. Now tutta spada instead is that ending part of the blade which is close to the crosscut, which is the strongest one with which you can parry or take the bind. While talking about these parts of the blade in a more casual way, we generally use the terms debole, which is weak, medio, which is middle, and forte, which is strong. The word guardia translates into guard, and it is that fencing position, that fencing stance that you are reaching from out of distance to approach an opponent, to fight an opponent. So you can reach many different guards, such as posta di donna, longa, breve, dente del zinghiaro, and many others, which I described in my poster series. At the same time, while talking about the sword itself, guardia may also signify the crossguard. If you put the word posta in the translator, it translates into mail, because it is an ancient Italic word, which instead in modern Italian could be posizione, which translates into position. So posta is a fencing position that you reach during the fight. Now, this is crucial. Actually, Maestro Fiore says that saying posta or saying guardia is the same thing. Actually, he says it because they are actually two distinct things, and he wants to put them together to make people think about these two concepts as the same thing, because the position that we reach while approaching the opponent before a fight and the one that we reach during the fight while moving our sword around are, generally speaking, the same, more or less, and we can relate to the movement in the same way by using the same terms, the same names of the poste and guardie, which are the same thing. Incrociare, which in modern Italian would be incrociare, is the term which refers to the act of crossing the blades. So every time you are crossing the blade, you are incrociando your spada, your sword. The word passare refers to various things. The first one being the act of landing a passing step. So the most common and normal way of stepping of a human being. Now, instead, in other contexts, the word passare means a slightly different things, which means going toward a point. So, passare alla traversa, for instance, which Fiore uses a lot, means moving to the traversa being most probably another line. So we can imagine different lines of attack. We have the front one and then other ones at an angle. So passare alla traversa means moving toward the traversa. It doesn't mean that we have to use that specific stepping act to reach that position. We may use that act, but we also may not. So it is not necessarily related to that specific act of stepping in every single case, every time this word is used. The word passare is still used nowadays with this meaning. It is mainly colloquial and it is mostly related to dialects. For instance, passare fuori di strada, so passare fuori di strada, which we see also used on the manual itself, which means going out of the way, it can be translated in this way, nowadays refers to the act of having an accident by car, generally speaking, where the car gets off the road. Now, this is the meaning of this sentence nowadays, which, funny enough, mostly signifies the same thing. The word accrescere or accrescer, which in modern Italian would be accrescere, can be directly translated to the word to increase, to the verb to increase. But actually, in the context of the Fiore manual, translates into a certain act of stepping. But which kind of stepping motion we are talking about? Now, generally speaking, accrescere is related to the fencing step or a little lunge, a small lunge. So it is considered the act of moving the front foot, for instance, forward slightly. But on the manual itself, we see the word accrescere used while talking about an act which is represented instead as a passare. Now, does this mean that are the same thing or it is an error or whatever? We don't know. But in my understanding, the best way to consider the word accrescere is to think about it as the act of moving toward a direction, so it may be accrescere dinanzi, so moving forward, or accrescere fuori di strada, so moving sideways, slightly. So accrescere is moving slightly toward a direction, not too much, not moving too much, just slightly, which ideally is an objective which can be reached with a small step, so a fencing step, or a small lunge, but it may also be a small passing step. Rompere translates back in the days, as well as now in modern Italian, into the verb to break. So rompere is breaking something. Now, in the context of the manual, it is used in romper di punta, which is breaking the thrust, which is the act of paring downwards the thrust of the opponent. Now, breaking is, of course, an image that you have in mind, so it is meant to represent the act of landing a powerful parry or blow on top of the opponent's thrust to beat it downwards. You don't actually break the opponent's sword, generally speaking. Scambiare, which also sometimes is referred to as scambiar, not scambiar, scambiar. Scambiar di punta is the act of exchanging a thrust. So the word scambiar is to exchange. So you can exchange a thrust with another thrust, a cut with another cut. Generally speaking, it refers to the act of landing an attack into another attack. Generally speaking, not necessarily the same attack. You can exchange a cut with a thrust, with opposition, generally speaking, so that you parry yourself, defend yourself while attacking, and it mainly refers to what we nowadays call an action on tempo, a counter-attack. The word largo translates into large, but in the context of the manual, it better translates into long. So largo refers to a long distance between me and the opponent. At a largo distance, it is possible to exchange blows and flee from the opponent backward to avoid attacks and something similar. The opposite of largo is stretto instead. The word stretto translates into tight, and actually it is probably the best word to refer to what happens in this kind of situation. You are at a short distance, but you are tight with your opponent, so you are very close in a narrow space and you have to act in that kind of conditions. While reaching stretto, you are close with the opponent, it is basically impossible to flee backwards, and instead you have to close distance, grapple, or do something similar. But the word stretto is also actually used to refer to all that actions that you are using at that distances. So at a short distance, at a tight distance. So every grappling action, pommel strike or whatever is referred to as a stretto action. Very good people, we are at the end of this video. I hope you will find it useful in some ways. Thanks for watching as always. Remember to check my Patreon page, link in the description, if you want to see more of my contents and if you want to support me and the channel. Thanks for watching as always, and see you next time.